Well, from Kenya, we are going to head to South Africa now. I'm really excited to have archaeologist and biological anthropologist, Dr. Keneiloe Molopyane joining us. She is the first research fellow at the Center for Exploration of the Deep Human Journey at the University of Wittwatersrand. She holds the title of being the first Black woman paleoanthropologist to act as principal investigator in the Cradle of Humankind in South Africa. She is taking on the re-exploration and continuing excavations at Gladysvale Caves. She was also recently named a National Geographic Emerging Explorer. I'm going to bring her in live with us right now. Keneiloe, good morning. How are you doing today?
Hello, how are you? Good evening from South Africa.
That's right. It's morning for me, but definitely getting later in the day for you. It is so great to see you. We're so excited to learn a little bit more about your story and the work you're doing. So I think the best thing to do is let you take over, then we'll let the public take over with their questions.
Excellent. Brilliant, Joe. That's a great plan. Thank you for having me here. I will say that I was very nervous about this talk, but let's see how it goes. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit here. Just give me a second. Joe, is my screen showing properly?
Yeah, it's loaded up and ready to go.
Cool. So my talk for you guys today is about the road to exploration. And essentially what I'm going to talk to you about is the story of how paleoanthropology in South Africa has changed as how I see it, right? So as Joe has mentioned before, I am an archaeologist at the University of the Wittwatersrand. I am the first research fellow at the Center for the Exploration of the Deep Human Journey, which is headed up by Professor Lee Burgo, who is a National Geographic Explorer at large. And I myself became an emerging explorer for National Geographic in 2021. So my background academically is in archaeology. So I was very much trained on Iron Age archaeology or early farming communities. So I dig very well. And during my years of studies, I also ventured into underwater archaeology, where I became a team member for the African Slave Wrecks project, which has featured quite recently in National Geographic magazines over the past week for African slave wrecks in and around Africa. And South Africa was one of those spots. But also I am a bioarchaeologist or biological anthropologist. So that means that I study skeletons from archaeological sites. Basically, not trying to figure out where it is that we're trying to go, but figuring out where it is that we have been through the remains of our ancestors, whether they're modern or ancient. And the ancient part is really where I want to go, because that was sort of a left turn in my career. I was never really interested in fossils until quite recently, 2018, when I joined the Rising Star team. But anyway, this is the area that I'm showing you right now is a map of the Cradle of Humankind, which is centered in Gauteng of South Africa. The size of this area is about 52,000 hectares in size, so it's quite a big area. And there are about 15 recognized fossil sites in this area, which is the largest concentration of fossil sites in the entire world. We make up at least 14% of the fossil record globally. And I have had the pleasure of working at 3 of the 15 in this area. And by 3 of the 15, I mean that only 1 is actually on the list. And by saying that 1 of the 3 that I've worked on is on the list should give you an indication that there are more than 15 fossil sites in the Cradle of Humankind. But the first site that I'm going to take you to is Rising Star, which is this icon right over here. And if anybody is anybody, they know that in 2015, the internet was broken by South Africa by the discovery of Home Naledi, discovered at the Rising Star Cave. And Home Naledi was an incredible find because it was the largest collection of fossil remains within a single locale. I mean, they found about 1,500 bone fragments of a hominid, which is the largest collection ever to be discovered in a single site. And along with the discovery of Home Naledi bones came the recognition of women in science. And before you have the original underground astronauts, the 6 women who went down into the cave of Rising Star and collected the remains and actually studied these remains. And this is your original crew of underground astronauts. And this was in 2013 to 2015. And what not a lot of people know about is that there was actually a second expedition which gave rise to a second class of underground astronauts and explorers for the Cradle of Humankind. And we are known as the next gen underground astronauts, of which I was a part of. And this was a really critical moment in South African paleoanthropology because South Africans were starting to become involved more visually and in popular media sort of form in paleoanthropology. So yeah, 2018 I joined the crew, and I got my first dose of spelunking. Adventuring into caves and deep environments in which I thought I would never find myself in because I was never quite interested in fossils, believe it or not. And now my whole career revolves around fossils. But I had a great time with the Rising Star team, going into deep, dark caves, tight spaces, uncovering ancient bones that would tell the story of the human journey, adding to the map of becoming modern humans as we understand it. And of course, I wear my Bruce legs as a bride of badge, a badge of pride, a badge of pride, because it's quite an adventure, and there are some difficulties to getting to the chambers where all these fossils are found. And it's, I embrace all the injuries that I get, even though it makes for pool parties being quite awkward to explain all the markings that have happened to my body. So yeah, I joined the team in 2018, and I've been part of the Home Naledi and Rising Star team since then. And I've been going down into the chambers, into the cave since then until 2019, continuously squeezing myself through tight spaces and getting to know my team members quite well, whilst uncovering more and more bones of Home Naledi and trying to understand the spatial distribution within the cave, like how the bones are distributed around the cave. So that's been quite interesting. But in 2020, the world sort of stopped. And I do know that a lot of labs, as you might call it abroad, sort of came to a standstill, and that research stopped. And we couldn't fly in specialized scientists from around the world to Africa to study these bones, to go down underground. So basically, I mean, for a lot of people, majority of people, 2020 was a very hard year. And for me personally, 2020 was an incredible year, personally and professionally, because in 2020, when the world came to a standstill and we couldn't go back to Rising Star and work in close quarters, that led to the opportunity to go venture into other paleo sites in the country with local scientists. And we decided to go back. By we, I mean the Center for Exploration at Wits University, decided to take a look at a new site, which was discovered in 2014, I think, during the height of Home Naledi. It's now known as UW105. And it was often ignored due to being in the shadow of Rising Star and the Home Naledi discovery. And we went into the site and we sort of took a first crack at it with local scientists. And this was my opportunity to be a leading figure as a young emerging South African scientist as a lead role. And from UW105, we have discovered some fantastic fossils. The most fantastic being the presence of a new hominid. And I will tell you that UW105 is about 200 meters from Rising Star. I think that's in my next slide. So it's not too far away from Rising Star, but there is this presence of another hominid on the landscape, and we need to venture out into this. So in 2020, 2021, we started a new expedition, the UW105 site expedition, where we use new methods of tackling a site. So UW105 is very unique in that it's different from Rising Star. We're not dealing with sediments or bones buried in a sedimentary context, but we're dealing with disassociated mining activity. So all the fossils that we're getting are in breccia blocks piled up in piles by miners from the early 20th century. And they're often disassociated and ignored by archaeologists and paleoanthropologists because they can't place them within their original context to understand what's actually happening to the site. So our outlook or our approach to the site was, let's try to reassociate this discontextualized material with its original background. And that's where the 105 expedition began, where we employed local community members to be a part of the team, to go down underground and to pick up all these blocks, take a look at them, see if there are any fossils within the material that we're seeing. And we then began to reconstruct the underground cave system above ground. So that would give us an indication of trying to understand how the site formed and how the miners from the early 20th century approached the site. So like I said, UW105 is about 200 meters. So this is UW105. It's approximately 200 meters from Rising Star. It's a completely different cave system. And it's such a pleasure to work in because it's quite big. And you can see all these images on Google Earth if you try to sort of follow what we're doing. You can see that there's a reconstruction of the cave and all the mining dumps that we have discovered from the original cave system on the surface. So this is our reconstruction up here. And this structure right here helps us to understand how the cave formed, how the fossils are getting into the cave, how the fossil cave formation happens, and how the miners sort of tackled their way through the cave system. And we store all our blocks within a block storage center, which is not too far from the actual reconstruction of the cave. And this is ongoing research that is happening at the moment. And what Professor Lee Berger and I we have this approach of open science. So we started a YouTube channel called called the Fossil Vault, where we document all the activities that are happening at UW105. So we do a lot of science communication, documenting, videographing everything that we do for the audience, for the public, to know what it is that we're doing and to expose paleoanthropology to people who might not know what it's about. So this is a form of science communication in a way that we're very proud of, and we'd love for you guys to subscribe to our channel, The Fossil Vault, and continue to follow into our adventures as we discover new hominid fossils and faunal material for the Cradle of Humankind in South Africa. And as I mentioned, I've worked on 3 of 15 sites in the Cradle of Humankind. And in 2021, when I became a National Geographic Emerging Explorer, I also got the title of becoming a principal investigator for Gladysvale Cave in the Cradle of Humankind. And this was quite significant because never in the history of South Africa has a Black woman, a young Black woman, being the leading force or the leading voice in paleoanthropological exploration in the country. So I'm the first, and I'm going back to Gladysvale, a site in which is not unknown to those in paleoanthropology in South Africa, and is a site that Professor Lee Burger started his career in South Africa about 25 years ago. So I'll be going back to Gladysvale to sort of re-explore and prove that Lee didn't quite know what he was doing when he approached the site about 20 plus years ago, nor did Professor Philip Tobias or Robert Broom know what they were doing when they were approaching the site. And I mention these names because they're quite big names in paleoanthropology in South Africa. So one of my hopes is to prove that from the lessons that I learned from UW 105 and Rising Star and what I know about paleoanthropology and the study of the deep human journey so far is proof that, you know what, these scientists didn't quite know what they were doing. And maybe it takes a local South African to sort of uncover the mysteries of what is beneath the earth, Ditswa Mung. So we're looking forward to going back to Gladysvale, and Gladysvale is not short of any fossils. There are fossils all over, and I'm very looking forward to sharing this with the world with this whole approach of open access and the YouTube channel and my Instagram channels to share this knowledge going forward. And along with that sharing knowledge going forward, again in 2021 is just a year of blessing, to be honest, because I became a SuperScientist hero, a comic book character that was drawn up with my fellow colleagues, Debogor, who's a geologist, who's also working with me on a new site called La Fika La Nuka within the Cradle of Humankind, Kim Tommy, who has recently took over my previous job as curator of the Marapeng Visitor Center, and Selindo, who's a geologist who has worked in the Cradle of Humankind. We are the first class of paleoanthropologists for the SuperScientists, which is a nonprofit organization that creates comic book characters or superhero characters for local children to showcase that scientists actually look like you and they're normal people, in a way to inspire young individuals into taking up a career that is not thought to be possible because you don't see people that look like you. And I say this because, I mean, I was very fortunate in that I'm very stubborn. And I was introduced into archaeology and paleoanthropology from a very young age. I was 7 years old when I decided this. And that's because I watched a cartoon. But not many children in South Africa are exposed to this sort of career field or associated field. So we came together, we now are part of this class of superheroes in the science, and at the moment we're creating a graphic novel or a comic book about our story, about our adventures, what we do in order to distribute it to children around the country who might not know what paleoanthropology is or what geology is, and just to give them hope that, you know, you don't have to become a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. There are other career avenues for you to go to that bring in a sense of national pride as well. And by saying, as I leave off, you know, this is my last slide. The face of paleoanthropology is changing in South Africa. It's no longer dominated by old white males or people from abroad coming into Africa and studying our fossils and telling us about them, but rather the future of paleoanthropology in Africa, in Southern Africa, is very soon to be dominated by people that I admire and call friends. And this is the new class of paleoanthropology that's coming through from South Africa. So I guess it's now your moment to take a look at our faces, get familiar with us, because we're really not going anywhere and we're going to be in your face pretty soon. Thank you very much, Joe.
All right. Well, Keneiloe, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. And I mean, where to start? First of all, it's so exciting to see that representation is happening, that South African scientists, their faces are being seen, their work is being recognized, and the roles are becoming larger. And so congratulations on an incredible 2020, 2021. It's hard to even figure where to start with the emerging explorership, with the expeditions, with the superhero comics. Amazing things are happening. And clearly you're a strong, powerful voice helping to make those amazing things happen.
Yeah, I try to be a loud voice.
All right, excellent. And that's so important, right? Is being vocal, taking risks, and putting things out there, because that's the way things get done.
Yeah,
no question.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only way that things get done. If you're going to be quiet about it, nothing will be done.
Yep.
And we've been talking about transformation in the science for many, many years. And I think in 2018, I sort of broke down a little bit where it was enough about the talk. It's time to do the action. And that's when I really took a left turn in my career and started doing things that were scary. And It's paid off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No question. So as we, I can see questions starting to come in via the chat. We're going to work a few of those questions in, but I want to start very early. As a diver myself, I'm obviously very passionate about being in the water. And, I'd love to know a little bit more about those wrecks. What kind of condition are they in? What are you finding when you're diving on those wrecks, when you were diving on those wrecks?
Right. So I started diving. Okay, first of all, so I have a very strong swimming background. I've been swimming since I was a child. I had never dived before 2012 when I moved back to South Africa from the UK. So I did my master's in the UK. Came back to South Africa, knew I wanted to do a PhD, but had no money to do it. And then got an internship at Iziko Museums. Mostly because I was a unique character in archaeology, a young Black female who could swim. And the curator was like, "Are you willing to dive?" So I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm willing to learn." So that's how I got into it. I just took that chance and learned how to dive like a freaking Navy SEAL. Jumping off harbor walls, night diving, having my mask and regulator ripped out of my mouth. All in preparation for Clifton Beach, which is where the Sao Jose is located. And Clifton is a very posh beach in Cape Town, South Africa. All the rich people are there. Like it's very posh. But the waters are so rough. Like my friend Sophie and I refer to Clifton as the washing machine. Because we were the smallest members of the team, and every time we went underwater, we'd be like rolled by the swells, not even waves, but like tiny little swells, and we'll be rolled over. So it was crazy chaotic. Cape Town is not an easy coast to dive on in comparison to Durban, which is more warm and calmer. So the shipwrecks in Durban are sort of in more good condition than those in Cape Town. Those are very much broken up and very difficult to get to. And I could go on for days about stories about that.
All right. Well, I definitely wanted to hear a little bit about it. Maybe we'll have to connect again later because I'd love to hear more. Let's head over to the caves. We've been lucky enough at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants to host Lee and many members of the team over the last few years at the Rising Star system. Lee had everything wired up, so we were live from the different chambers. So we've seen firsthand some of the challenges of getting into the cave, getting through some of those tight spaces. I know at one point it's something like a 7-inch kind of slot that you have to get through. You didn't expect to kind of your career to take this turn. What was it like getting into those cave systems for the first time? Were you afraid? What was it like?
I was terrified. I will tell you this. I was terrified. I mean, what led me to joining the expedition, the second expedition in 2018, I was a PhD student at the time, third year. And this was a time where I was supposed to be writing up my thesis. And like any good PhD student, I was sort of over it. I wanted something different. I was procrastinating, so I joined the team. And I'd never been caving before, so this was my first experience being in a cave and sort of, I mean, Rising Star is not a piece of cake. It is something completely different. And I've been stuck a couple of times. And I'm not afraid to say it to anyone. I've been stuck. I've had my head stuck. I've had my hips and thighs stuck everywhere. There's a passage called Ballerina Passage that we had to go through during the training phase, where I renamed it into something that's not so delicate as Ballerina's Passage.
Yeah.
But it was quite difficult to get through. But you know, the one thing that I really love about the Rising Star team, the exploration team at Rising Star, is that if you are stuck, there's always somebody there to keep you calm and to help you work your way through the difficulty.
Yeah.
And that's often just like taking a breath, going back, reassessing the situation, and then trying to get through again.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely amazing. So we'll squeeze in one more question here. You know, we saw that overhead picture. We saw the Rising Star. We saw the new kind of cave system with more space that you're working in right now. And so that area, I mean, is it accurate to say you're just scratching the surface? There's so many other cave kind of systems and openings in that area that, I mean, yourself and your fellow South African paleoanthropologists are going to be busy for a long time.
Yeah, we're going to be busy for forever. If I could refer to UW 105 with the work that we've been doing there, which you can catch on the Fossil Vault channel on YouTube, we really are just 1% of figuring out what's happening in that cave or the fossils that are coming around in and around that cave system, which is very different from Rising Star. So that's going to be like at least 20 years worth of work, right? Just on one cave system, one site. And like I said, the cradle is known to have at least 15 cradle sites, fossil sites. But in reality, there are over 200. So yeah, we're going to be very busy.
Yeah, no question. Well, you and you know your colleagues, you are blazing a trail. You're incredibly inspirational for that next generation who might be thinking about, where do I want to take my career? What do I want to do next? What is my seeing you represent themselves represented in those fields, I think is so important. So absolutely incredible work that you're doing. I do want to share a few links here. If people want to follow along, there's your Twitter and your Instagram link. And I'm so excited about the YouTube channel, the Fossil Vault. So I'm just sharing it there. It's probably trying to click that. It's too much. Just so searching the Fossil Vault on YouTube is probably the easiest way to track it down. Science communication is so important. Sharing the story, sharing in a way that's accessible to everybody, not just, you know, scientific journals and articles that only a few are able to kind of decipher and gather knowledge from. So I think that's really exciting. And, you know, thank you for everything you're doing and spending some time with us here today.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait for everyone that will join on our adventures. We're not so serious all the time. You will see in the Fossil Vault channel, we goof around a little bit, as well as on Facebook, Daily Life of the Explorer. You'll see us goof around a little bit. And it's fun because, you know, it showcases that scientists are normal people as well.
Yeah. And I think that's what it was exciting with that story you shared about, you know, a cartoon kind of sparking that interest in archaeology for you. And that's something we really believe strongly here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. It could be a book, a meeting, an inspirational educator. You never know what moment is going to kind of flick a switch for somebody and set them onto their career path, their passion.
Yeah, it's lovely to see that in younger individuals, as you're talking to them, being a noble person, trying to also be scientific at the same time.
Yeah.
And to see the light bulb go off in their head, it's a magic moment, and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, my child.
Amazing. Well, Keneiloe, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to host you today. Have a great rest of your weekend. Hopefully you can tune in a little bit more and see some of the other events coming up.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thank you.